Then as I turned back to my work, I noticed something in the corner of my eye. Something was standing in my room now.
Hello, and welcome to all Dente Creepypasta. Horror stories cooked to perfection with a splash of red sauce. My name is CZ, and I will be your server this episode. Today's stories are perfect for a cozy night of studying, relaxing, and getting the chills running down your spine at the absolute horror that's about to unfold. Make sure you get comfortable, and let's dig right in. Listening to music has always been my favorite part of winding down when I get home every evening. Lately, I have really taken a liking to relaxing in my room and jamming to some lo-fi chill music. Every night before I go to bed, I'll toss on a YouTube stream, kick back, and talk to strangers in the chat for a while before logging out for the night. I always find it interesting how this seems to be the only internet chat section in the known universe where people always get along. I feel like the chill music vibe has something to do with it. Lately, I've started to notice the same group of people who tend to go online every day around the same time. Would it be too weird to call them my friends, even though we haven't met? We all have similar interests, and it feels like we can talk about anything. Cowboy Bebop, old school video games, our favorite YouTubers, even our most disliked teachers. I was chatting in the stream at our usual time when a channel popped into the conversation and wrote the words "roll call" in all caps. Random people started writing their location in the chat. Chicago, Los Angeles, Tokyo. Figuring there was no harm in simply putting a city, I typed mine into the chat and continued to read where the others were from. That's when I started noticing that quite a few of my friends were close by. Really close by. I kind of daydreamed about what it would be like if we met in real life. And as if to read my mind, one of the regulars in the chat, Shadowhand1133, pointed out that we were all actually really close to each other. One thing led to another, and I know this is a stupid idea, but we decided to meet up. I justified it in my head, telling myself that we'd all spoken to each other almost every night in the chat. It's not like anyone appeared out of the blue and asked us to meet. It felt safe, and they felt like friends. I'll just say this right now, because I'm sure you think you know where this is going. Trusting the people I was talking to online was not necessarily where I went wrong in this story. Actually, it may have been my saving grace, but there was one other thing I overlooked that led to what I can only describe as the scariest encounter of my life. After school, I rode my bike to the 7-Eleven we all decided to meet at around the edge of town. I got there a few minutes early and sat on the curb to wait for the others. I had no faces to look out for. We actually only knew each other by username, so everyone I saw walking in and out of the convenience store was potentially one of us, and I was just imagining each new face I saw linking up with a name. But over the course of the next 20 minutes, nobody approached me, and I didn't see any messages from the others, even though I tried hitting them up to see where they were at. I was beginning to think that I was the only one who showed up when I heard a voice behind me.
Hey.
I turned to see a man, probably in his late 20s or early 30s. For some reason I specifically remember his figure shading my eyes and blocking out the now setting sun.
Are you part of the lo-fi group?
I told him yes, and let him know both my YouTube username and my real name. He told me he was Shadowhand, which I instantly recognized as the one who had the idea for the meetup in the first place. I did notice that he didn't mention his real name, which was only slightly weird because I had given him my first name. But understanding the somewhat awkward nature of meeting people from online, I didn't press the issue, since I didn't want to ask anything that might have made him uncomfortable. I had also expected someone around the same age as me, so seeing that he was significantly older was just a bit off-putting. He told me that the rest of the group was already hanging out down the street at one of the girls' houses, and that he'd give me a lift over there. His car was parked on the side of the 7-Eleven, and after locking up my bike to a fence, I followed him over towards it. I'm fully aware of the dangers of getting into a stranger's car, so let me just clarify what was going through my head at the moment. The first thing that came out of his mouth when he approached me was about the lo-fi group, so it's not like I was just getting picked up by some rando. There were also several of us meeting up, so unless this guy made a bunch of YouTube accounts just to trick me into getting into his car, I felt like there wasn't much of a threat. He opened the back door of his SUV. I received a message from one of the group members. It was from him, from Shadowhand 1133. He said he was in front of the 7-Eleven, and he was asking if anyone was here. I froze in front of the open car door. I looked up at the guy, then back down at my phone. "Did you send this?" He said yes and tried to usher me into the car, but then, for the first time that afternoon, something did not feel right. I turned back and looked at the front of the store, where I had been waiting before. There was a kid standing there, about my age, looking at a phone. What happened next is still talked about to this day. The kid turned around and, by some stroke of luck, spotted me and waved. I turned and waved back, but before I could tell the man who had offered me a ride that there was somebody back by the door of the convenience store, I heard the car door slam shut behind me. This guy literally ran to the driver's side, and before I even knew what had happened, he was in the car, turning the ignition and flooring it out of the parking lot before booking it down the road like something out of a bank robbery scene. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'll break it down for you. The kid in front of the 7-Eleven was the real Shadowhand 1133. The man in the car was just pretending to be him since it was a recognizable name from the chat. We would later figure out that the man with the car wasn't anyone from the group who had agreed to meet up, but because we had planned our get-together on a public livestream, anyone could see it. That was our big mistake. Even though all of us were trustworthy, some random creep noticed our conversation and decided to take advantage of it. Police would later review the 7-Eleven security footage to see the man pull up several minutes before I arrived, hiding in his SUV along the side of the building, which was not covered by any camera. Then, upon realizing I was the only one who had showed up, decided to make his move. His license plate was never visible on camera due to the angle at which he drove in. While we do know he was one of the people tuned into the livestream that day, the police had no way of getting an actual list of IP addresses or accounts who accessed it. So, to this day, he has never been caught. I guess there is one good thing that came out of all of this though, outside of me really putting my guard up. The real Shadowhand and I became very good friends, and it's always an interesting story when people ask how we know each other. And no, that isn't his real username. I changed it for this story because you can never be too careful. He and I have spent many hours talking about what might have happened to me if he had gotten there a second later and I had gotten into that car. It sends shivers down my spine thinking about what that guy was planning to do or where he was planning to take me in that dark windowed SUV of his. I mean, what kind of kidnapper goes after random people in a YouTube stream anyway? He had no way of knowing who I was or even that I would show up to the meetup, let alone the fact that I was there by myself. That's the other thing. We later found out that the other kids we were supposed to meet up with just didn't show up and decided not to let the group know that they'd no longer be coming. I can't say I blame them for bailing considering what almost happened, but it would have been nice if they'd given a heads up. As far as the lo-fi streams go, yeah, I still listen to them and partake in the chat too. It's not like I'd be in any kind of danger just because some freak knows my first name and my face. But there is something that still bothers me through this entire experience. Every time I write a message in the chat of that stream, before I press enter, I think about the possibility that that guy with the SUV is watching and reading every message that I put out. I was planning on having my girlfriend over that evening, so I threw on some music and got to cleaning the place. I went upstairs to get started on my room, since I figured we'd be spending most of our time there. As I was making my bed, I heard what sounded like someone rummaging around downstairs. I do leave the door unlocked when she's coming over, but she wasn't supposed to come by for another hour and a half, and early is not part of her vocabulary. It took me a few moments to realize that the song I was listening to was sampling sound bites. What I thought I heard was all part of the music. I finished making my bed and started folding some of the piles of clothes that covered the majority of my bedroom floor. No, that had to be coming from downstairs. I paused the music and listened more closely. Okay, maybe I was right the first time. Maybe it was just part of the music. I unpaused, and sure enough, the sound that I thought I had heard was looping in the song. I got back to work folding my clothes. Okay, that was definitely not part of the song. I paused the music yet again, and just as it paused, I heard a door close down below.
Amy? Amy? Is that you?
I called out my girlfriend's name to try to put an end to whatever prank she was pulling down there. My heart stopped when I saw the scene at the bottom of the stairs. Every single closet, cupboard, and drawer was open, and the contents of each were thrown on the ground. My place had been ransacked. The strange part was, nothing had been taken, as far as I could tell. Whoever was in my house was looking for one thing in particular, and I had no idea what it was. I did a brief search on the ground floor of my house, but I didn't manage to turn up anybody, so I took a seat on the stairs and dialed 911. That's when I heard a noise coming from upstairs behind me.
Who's there?
Whoever had broken into my house had inadvertently started playing my music again. Or maybe it was on purpose. I honestly had no idea at this point.
Hello, 911, what's your emergency?
I had completely forgotten that I was on the phone.
There's someone in my house.
Are you in a safe place where you can talk?
I explained the situation, and they recommended I get to a safe place such as a neighbor's house while they sent somebody out. I might have been inclined to stay and protect my belongings, however, the intruder made it quite clear he didn't really care about valuables, so for the better of my safety, I took their advice. The intruder was never found, and nothing was taken from my house as far as I could tell. I don't leave the door open for my girlfriend anymore. I made sure to copy her a key after that night. It's also made me a bit paranoid whenever I listen to music. I'm constantly pausing if I hear anything that doesn't sound instrumental. And if I even think I heard something, I'm sure to check all around the house. I take a night class on Wednesday evenings at my university. Usually I take an Uber home, but I was running a bit low on money and I decided to walk. I typically listen to music when I walk. Hoodie up and earbuds in. When you have long hair like I do, you gotta keep it dry. There was a super light rainpour that night, not even enough to use an umbrella, but just enough to where it felt like a nice cool mist with my hood up. So I was just casually walking home, looking at the ground, not really paying much attention to my surroundings. I play this little game in my head where I try to step on each sidewalk tile the same amount of times, so if I do it I have like a perfectly paced walk or something. If you don't get it, I probably can't explain it to you. Anyway, I was looking down and all of a sudden I nearly step in this huge open manhole in the ground. I jump back and my heart's beating out of my chest because I nearly just fell down and broke my freaking neck at the bottom of the sewers. Who left the sewage cap open to begin with? Naturally, I had to look down it. It's not every day you get to see an open manhole. I turned on my phone's flashlight and peered down inside. What I didn't expect to see was a pair of eyes staring back up at me. These eyes squinted as if they hadn't seen light in days, but that wasn't the most disturbing part. The guy's head was shaved, except for maybe a 3-inch diameter where the hair was grown out about 12 inches or so. So the result was he was bald, except for this one messy tube of hair coming out of the side of his head. He wore a dirty beige jacket and matching jeans. He also had huge dark bags underneath his eyes, and he immediately cowered away from the lights and hid in one of the pipes down below. Not expecting to see someone down there, my heart skipped a beat and I pulled away from the rim of the manhole. Who was that? No, what was that? Maybe I was just overreacting. So there's a homeless guy who takes shelter in the sewers. He probably came up because of all the rain we've been getting and got a little spooked when I saw him. As for the haircut, hard to explain that one. But he's living in the sewers. Probably has some issues to begin with. That's just the sad truth of the matter. I got home, took my shoes off under the awning, tossed my hoodie in the dryer. It had gotten more damp than I had thought over the course of the long walk home. I went on the computer for a bit before going to bed, and that's when I passed out. Until I realized that my ringtone was still on. I went to turn it off. I had no interest in replying to the message until I just happened to notice what it said in the preview panel. It was from my friend who lived in the dorms across the way from me. It said, "Who's that by your window?" What? What was he talking about? I reached over for the light switch. There was nothing at my window as far as I could tell. At least, that's what I thought at first. And I do wish that was the case. My window is one of those with a really strong glare. During the day, you can see out from the inside, but if you try looking in from the outside, it's almost like looking in a mirror. During the night, it's reversed, to where it's hard to see out from the inside, but outsiders can see me provided that the light is on and the blinds are up, which they were. Although looking out was kind of like looking through a mirror, there was an unmistakable outline of someone standing on the other side. There's only one way to get a better look out at night, to get your face close to the glass and create a shade with your hands. And that's exactly what I did. I wish I hadn't. Because for the second time that night, I saw that terrifying, wild pair of eyes staring back at me. I only looked out of the window for a slight moment before jumping back out of my skin and screaming as I reached for my phone to dial campus security. But what I saw in that moment literally makes me sick to think about, but I'll try to recount it for the purposes of this story. The man at the window, the sewer-dwelling man from before, didn't have a weird haircut. He was actually entirely bald, but he had several different colors of hair super glued to his head in that one spot. Like it was his collection or something, because I also spotted an object in his right hand, a rusty pair of scissors. I must have screamed the poor security guy's ear off before promptly hanging up and, in an act of desperation, pushing my furniture up to barricade the door. But it wasn't the door I had to be worried about, because he started stabbing the scissors into the window. His taps got harder and harder. It didn't seem like the window would give much longer before breaking. I was frantically searching my room for something to fight back with, but I didn't have much. The tapping stopped. A bright light flooded the area, and relief washed over me as the campus security pulled up. I couldn't hear or see very much, but from what I could tell, the security guard asked the guy a couple questions, which he promptly ignored, and continued to just stare through my window. The guard asked him to leave, and he did comply, but what still chills me is that he never took his eyes off me the entire time he was being escorted away, until he was completely out of sight. The guard caught back up with me later. I told him the whole story about the manhole. He said I should be careful when walking home with headphones at night. There have been a few cases of people being followed home by predators, and not noticing because they were wearing headphones. Usually it's just some drunk weirdos going after girls, but as we saw tonight, there are just some weird people out there, and you can never be too careful. There wasn't much he could do, since the guy was on a public walkway and didn't really break any law. I always make sure to get a ride home after night classes now. I haven't seen the guy since then, and I hope I never do.
Ah, yes. There's nothing quite like the smooth, relaxing sounds of lo-fi when it comes to getting some studying done. It's the jazzy chords, the bassy undertones, the nostalgic samples. Something about it is just too enticing. I don't even normally listen to hip-hop. When jamming out, I normally like my music to be fast and loud. But when I'm trying to be productive, lyrics and catchy riffs just distract me. But with lo-fi, I can just melt away piles of work without even realizing it. It's just something about the vibes. You know what I mean? That atmosphere created by the combination of the music and the scenes of adorable characters doing their thing on a rainy day or a cloudy night. Even the people in the chat of the live stream seem to be so easygoing and friendly, but I try not to get distracted by that too much. So today, I'm studying for a neurological science exam. We're studying the effects of Pavlovian conditioning in neurophysiology. it's easily my favorite course. We sometimes do experiments to see if we can train small rodents using the concepts we study. Sometimes I'd like it if my kid brother Tevin could be as easily trained, but I seriously doubt that something like that will ever be possible on any intelligent being. However low on the spectrum Z intelligence may fall. And what do you know, look who's right on cue.
Hey bro, what you doing?
Studying.
Oh, okay. So you're busy?
Yes, Tevin, I'm very busy.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to see if you wanted to go to Robo Pizza later. They're having a...
Okay, look, I've got an exam on Monday and I'm already really tired. Well, maybe another time.
Well, of course you're tired being cooped up here listening to this mopey music all day.
Hey, you know, it's not mopey music. You just... But before I could even finish objecting, he, in true rodent fashion, scampered into my room and pounced on my laptop without permission nor regret. Okay, look, Tev, you know what? I'll take you to your dang pizza place if you get out now and leave me alone for the next hour. In the time it took him to say the word deal, he scattered out of my room and slammed the door behind him. And try not to touch anything on your way out. Well, I'd bought an hour to myself, and to be totally fair, I actually didn't mind the Future Funk playlist he clicked on. It actually did wake me up a little bit. By the end of the night, I was feeling okay about my chances on the test, but I still had some other homework to finish up. So the following night, I found a good lo-fi stream, and time to get in the zone and knock this thing out. Now, this next part, I don't fully know how to describe. I was so in the zone doing this mindless work that it was almost like I was asleep. And without me really realizing it, the music began to get more and more disturbing, off-key, and just downright unsettling. But it happened so gradually that I almost didn't notice it until it was eating at my anxiety. The music that once relaxed me was now putting me on a very uncomfortable edge. And for some reason, well, I didn't have the sense of mind to stop it. It was like I was trapped in an unbreakable loop of tedious work. My body wanted to snap out of it so bad, but my mind wouldn't come up with the commands to go through with it. Then, for some unknown reason, I looked at my laptop screen where the Chillhop stream was playing, and what I saw affected me so badly. I felt as if I couldn't even breathe. In place of the kawaii anime girl doing her homework was some kind of demon. A demon whose eyes pierced through my soul so badly that I couldn't look away to end the suffering it was causing. It curled its smile in the most unimaginable way. It almost made me sick. It was like it was looking at me specifically and it was enjoying putting me in this trance-like state. I don't remember what exactly happened after that. The next thing I knew, I was standing in my little brother's doorway, unable to recall how or why I was standing there. Tevin was staring back at me from his bed with a confused expression on his face.
Bro, what are you doing?
How long have I been standing here?
I don't know. I was just playing the Switch and I randomly noticed you spacing out at my door. I've been trying to wake you up for like 2 whole minutes.
I cringed at my own unawareness. I'm sorry, I just forgot why I came in here.
Okay, are you on drugs?
No! What? No! Of course not. I just forgot why I came in here. I'm just really tired, I guess. Not knowing what else to say and feeling slightly embarrassed for myself, I headed back to my room. I figured maybe I was right. Maybe I did just need some sleep. The next day at school, I felt like I had totally recovered. And you know what? I killed the science test. Honestly, I felt like I knew every single answer. And it was overall a really good day. The teacher had assigned a new project, so after school, I went straight back to work. Tevin blabbered something about him wanting me to take him somewhere as soon as I walked through the door, but I firmly told him that I had a lot of work to do. For starters, I didn't even have a topic for my project, so I needed to find some ideas. I went to go turn on some music when, suddenly, I remembered about yesterday. The lo-fi, The demon. The randomly finding myself in my brother's room. I typed lo-fi into YouTube to see what would turn up and found the same stream from yesterday. What appeared on the screen before me seemed normal, so I looked into the chat to see if there was anything suspicious. I don't know what I thought I was gonna find, but there were just some kids having casual conversation, nothing major. I started to realize how ridiculous I was being. I figured I just fell asleep and sleepwalked into my brother's room. One of our uncles was a known sleepwalker when he was younger, so it didn't seem that crazy to me. But before I could breathe a sigh of relief, something began to sound kind of off about the music. I looked back at my screen. The demon from before was back, and its eyes were locked on mine. Its cold stare petrified me. It reached out towards me. It felt like it was literally reaching out of the screen, though I don't really believe that's actually possible. It couldn't be. For whatever reason, I didn't move. I didn't scream. I didn't click away to another video. Nothing. I was frozen. I felt like it was gonna get me and that I would never be able to come back. And that's all I remember. The next thing I can recollect was being in a dark room, not knowing where the hell I was, and wondering where it had taken me. My eyes began to adjust, and what I saw before me was a face. A face of horror. It was my brother, lying on his bed, terrified, looking like he was about to scream bloody murder. Why was I standing over his bed? How did I end up here?
What are you doing?
I don't know. I think I've been sleepwalking. What he told me next chilled me right to my core.
But your eyes were open. You had the scariest look on your face. When I saw you like that, I thought you were gonna hurt me.
I was shocked that he would say such a thing. I sat down on his bed. Tev, you know I would never hurt you.
Promise?
Of course not. I would never even think about it. I honestly don't remember anything until I woke up right here.
Okay.
He didn't sound terribly convinced, but I told him to go back to bed and asked him to let me know if he caught me sleepwalking again. It was late. I knew this would probably be an all-nighter. I mean, I still had a ton of homework to get done. I also felt that I should probably do it without the assistance of lo-fi streams on YouTube. You know, just to play it safe. But when I went back into my room and looked over all the work I had left, I realized every single assignment was done. My science project was done too. For the first time in my academic career, I was ahead. The next day at school was crazy. I got my test back. A+, 102%. I had nailed every question and the extra credit. In every class, I knew every question the teacher asked. And I know this is gonna sound crazy, but sometimes I knew the question the teacher was gonna ask before she even asked it. Any chance that I'd be studying to any other sound but the sound of the lo-fi stream that night was now out the window. When I got home, I locked my door. Hopefully that would keep me from sleepwalking into anyone's room. And of course I was afraid I might see that demon thing again, but at this point, that didn't really matter. I figured it was worth it. The stream was waiting for me in my recommended list. I clicked on it, opened a book, and started reading. Several minutes went by. Nothing happened. Possibilities started floating through my head. Like, maybe it doesn't work if you're expecting it. Or, maybe it was a time thing. I mean, I was studying earlier than I did on previous nights, but I cranked up the volume until it was as loud as it would go. Still, no effect. I figured my best bet was just to try studying as normal, and if it happens, At that moment, I heard that familiar sound. Things were getting weird again with the audio. I looked up at the screen expecting to see that demon staring back at me, but what I saw instead was a large, empty room. It was the same room that the anime girl was usually studying in, but it was just empty. Then as I turned back to my work, I noticed something in the corner of my eye. Something was standing in my room now, which I quickly realized was impossible because my door was locked. The figure stepped forward and what I saw was a life-sized version of the demon from my computer screen, grinning at me. I fell back out of my chair and slammed on the ground. I'd never been so scared. I tried to scramble away, but somehow it was standing over me, smiling with that devilish smile. I can't even properly describe it. The mouth opening was probably wider than a football. All I could do was flail as it began to smother me. I could hear its growl take over the sound of the stream. Darkness surrounded me as I could feel the demon hitting me in the chest, arms, and the face. The growl turned into a screech.
Mom! Dad! Help!
What I saw before me horrified and disgusted me. It was Tevin, on his bed again, but this time with a pair of hands clenched tightly around his throat. It didn't take long for me to realize the horror of the situation. They were my hands. I was choking my little brother with my own hands. I could hear the scream playing audibly from the other room. I had no control over myself. I had my brother pinned down on his bed and I was forcing the air out of him. Suddenly a flash of light filled the room as the door slammed open. My father quickly assessed the situation and I was thrown off violently. I'd never seen him act so aggressively in my entire life and it felt horrible seeing him treat me so violently. That was definitely a rough night. Actually, it was the beginning of a rough couple of months. Luckily, my brother was okay. The police came, and of course nobody believed my side of the story. I ended up being sent away for a while, but with no incidents and no sign of mental illness, thankfully my stay in the institution didn't last long. The next year, I was back in school as normal. Thankfully, I had disappeared near the end of the year, so not too many people even noticed that I was gone. One day in the fall, my curiosity and lack of closure got the better of me, and I muted my computer and tried to find the string that had supposedly set me off. I mean, I had no intention of actually listening to it. I just wanted to report it. After a search that ended up giving me nothing, I decided to look back at my browser history and there it was. I gulped. Was it really a good idea to click on this link after several months, even with no incidents? I just had to know. 404. The page you're trying to access does not exist. I was confused. There was an important distinction. It didn't say that the stream had been deleted or that the channel had been taken down. According to what it said, nothing ever existed in the first place. I decided it wasn't worth wasting my life on, so I closed the laptop and forgot about it. That was my last experience with lo-fi for the next 2 years. I made the effort to avoid it whenever I could. I was at my first college party. I didn't usually go to parties, but my friend had convinced me that this one would be a pretty laid-back gig. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised to hear the sounds of lo-fi Chillhop pumping through the speakers. I took a deep breath. Okay, I can handle this. It's just music at a party. If I need to dip outside, I can. I composed myself and walked into the party with my friend.
Thanks for listening to all Dente Creepypasta. Your total today comes out to $11.33, but if you like this video right now, I'll waive that fee and give you everything you just listened to, absolutely free. Big thanks to Mr. Black's audio animation for narrating that last story. If you're a fan of all Dente Creepypasta, you'll definitely want to subscribe to Mr. Black's channel by clicking here. He is the best at telling his stories through his own style of immersive sound design. He calls it audio animation, and you definitely need to hear it. As you heard in this episode, music was a huge part of these stories. The original score was composed by OST Maker, and the end theme you're hearing now is performed by Naoya Sakamata. Links to all these channels are available in the credits section at the bottom of the description. Let me know what your favorite story was from this episode in the comments. And remember to subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week. Ring that death bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive.